yes, this is an airplane right here. It doesn't look like an airplane yet. It looks like a brown box. There's actually 2 boxes that come with the Empennage kit. This is the first of 2. We'll open this one first. It'll probably have the inventory sheet and the small parts, and then we'll go to the larger flat pack after this one. There's lots and lots of paper. On my RV-14 kit, it was also packed super well, just like this. Here's the packet that goes with it, the Empennage packet. And we'll look through that first. And you'll see they give you very good notes. They give you very good instructions. Study the packing list, they say. Look at the sub-kits. Some information about how things are marked. If you call them with anything in this list that isn't here, there's no argument, there's no discussion. They put it in the mail to you, happily, cheerfully, and pretty quickly also. So this is the packing list. The packing list will have everything that's in here listed by the bag and then by what's in the bag. It's quite a lot of items. This looks like 4 pages of actual items. So we'll be going through that and opening everything up, and we'll be counting it. So the first step is see what's under all this paper. Now I want to be careful because I don't want to throw anything away under this paper, but basically it's all just not really useful for a whole lot else. Right on top of this box is the plans. They send you excellent plans in full size, so we'll come back to that later. Now you'll notice that everything is wrapped in paper to protect it. That'll be true for everything in these kits. You end up with more paper than you could possibly want. It's a little bit like Christmas. And then within the paper, all the parts are usually wrapped in some kind of shrink wrap around it to hold it together so that it doesn't rattle around and scratch and such. So we'll be taking this apart, inventorying all of this, and then got some shelves we'll store it on and pull it as we need as we build. One thing that's handy is to kind of remember how they're stacked, because sometimes you can just stack them up the same way and save yourself some space. The folks at Vans Aircraft have figured out how to very efficiently stack a bunch of stuff up so it doesn't take up a lot of space. On the other hand, perhaps you have more shelf than you need and you can spread it out widely and kind of group things together. I'll probably do somewhere in between. Things are grouped by how they're wrapped, so once you find the one item, usually everything in that sub-kit is together. That makes it easier to inventory as we go. So I'll be looking for all of the items that are in that group. That also tells me on the side over here what they go with, and so a lot of this seems related to the rudder. So I'll probably put these in a pile related to the rudder, although the horizontal stabilizer pieces are in here too. So there's not always rhyme or reason as to what's in a sub-kit. Usually it's just because it packs well, but you can find them all in one spot once you've located the first one. So my style of storing things for the build is to group the things that go together. Like this is horizontal stabilizer, this is rudder, horizontal stabilizer. These look like elevator pieces, and this is vertical stabilizer, and this is rudder. So if I start making a pile on my storage shelves based on the item in the Empennage, then it'll be easier to find it later on, and maybe I won't have to do so much digging. So let me clear this out. So the next package was the elevator horns, and this is kind of a good example of what the steel parts look like, because these are steel. They come preformed and welded together, finished, holes drilled, for the most part. There's often some finish drilling to be done, but you'll see that they're white, and some people have, I've seen on websites this referred to as Ford tractor gray, but it's kind of a white color. One for each side, nice and powder coated all around, pretty uniform quality. And this will protect the steel from corrosion for a very long time, so you don't have to worry about the steel parts corroding in general. You never know what's in the next roll of paper. So this roll of paper held fiberglass parts. Again, it's shrink wrapped really well. I found that it's easier to find the place where it comes apart and unroll it, but sometimes that's hard to find and you just end up tearing it. Tearing it isn't always easy. This stuff is super tough. And then sometimes it just slides off like that. We can chuck it on the trash heap. So, Van's parts for fiberglass, most of them come preformed, gel coated, which is nice because it gives UV resistance to the part, and rough cut. And when I say rough cut, it's because this, for example, is the bottom of the rudder. And so this is where the tail light will go. This is the forward end, and there's going to be a need with this piece to trim it to fit, drill holes down the side, probably going to do some work on this back, have to do some work to make the tail fitting super flush. So, and there's an edge down here on the bottom. So there's some amount of finish work to make the fiberglass parts fit. These are the parts for, these are the elevator edges, 2 of those. This looks like the top of the rudder to me, and it is, R-809. And then we've got a vertical stabilizer tip and horizontal stabilizer tips. So these are all the fiberglass parts for the Empennage. They will go in a stack and be one of the last things I do, probably. This is the kind of work that I do after the whole Empennage is completed. If I have time waiting for a thing, or there's a shipment in the mail, or I'm kind of hung up, this is the sort of the filler project over the lifetime of the plane. I slowly do 1 or 2 of these as they go along. And here is a big hunk of lead. I suppose you could melt it down for bullets and things, but why would you want to do that? It's already poured to the right shape to be the elevator counterbalance. It's got the countersunk holes where the washers will go and the screws that screw it in place. It's a little rough around the edges. We might find ourselves in the kit shaving off some weight at some point in order to balance the elevator correctly. On my 14, I made very little modification to the counterbalances. They were pretty much right on the money as delivered. So big hunk of lead. It's kind of amazing how light this is. You know, if you just look at the size of it, 2 feet long, a big bundle of aluminum parts, you think, boy, that ought to be heavy. But I got to tell you, it's super light. It weighs almost nothing. Airplanes are very light and very airy. One problem I was having after I finished my other kits was I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of small parts, and because the instructions had, you know, run their course, and because the parts were either leftovers or things I had bought in surplus, I ended up with all these different types of things all loose, and when I went to try to find a thing, I couldn't find it. So I went to an envelope system. You can buy these envelopes for very low amount of money, 1,000 envelopes for maybe $10, and I can't remember how many I bought. I didn't buy that many, but I've got lots of these envelopes, and these are the envelopes that jewelers use. So if you took a ring to a jeweler and wanted something done, they'd put a label on it, they would put the ring down in the envelope, and they'd put it in their little bucket of things to do. Well, I've used it for a different purpose here, but you'll find them as jewelers envelopes, or sometimes you see them listed as coin envelopes on eBay or on Amazon. They're pretty inexpensive, but what I've done with my old parts is I have an inventory system where I put on the bag what's in it. I've got a number at the top so I know what bag it is. And now if I need to find an AN525 8R8 screw, because I looked at my plans, I replaced something, the screw was kind of stripped out, I can look at my inventory. I know it's bag 618. I got a whole bunch of them here. Pull out a screw. I'm also keeping track of how many I have. You're not going to have this system. Honestly, it's not something you need when you get a new Vans RV kit. When you get a new Vans RV kit, you get a bag. And every one of these sub kits is listed out on the inventory sheet. So for the longest time, what you can do is you can just keep all this together. When you need a part, you pull out your inventory sheet, you find where it is, you find where that screw is, or you find where that nut and bolt combination is. It'll tell you what bag it is. Then you just pull up the bag and pull it out and use it and go from there. So you don't need the coin envelope or the jeweler's envelope system that I had. I ended up with that after everything was done. But it is a very handy way down the road for keeping track of where all your spare parts are in a way where it's not half an hour to find a thing. I can find a part in about 30 seconds. So something to think about if you're motivated for super organization, or you just have to give your kids a 1-week project over the holidays. This is a nice project, but don't try to do something like that to start with. I do like these boxes though. These boxes are from IKEA. They're made in China, if that matters to you. You know, there's other systems like this made in the USA, but this has the particular feature of being extremely inexpensive. Probably $4 for this box, maybe $6, I can't remember anymore. They do stack. They stack when they're new. So if you buy 10 of them, you can stack them up and it only takes, you know, this much space. But they stack really nice, 2 on a shelf like this. And if you put labels on the end, one could be your Empennage kit, one can be your wing kit, etc. Because for a long time, that's kind of the way you're going to think about this: is where's my part and what kit is it in, what inventory sheet is it found. I can't overstate what a pain it is to go and try and find a screw or a bolt or a nut if you haven't at least kept it as organized as Vans gave it to you. If you try to spread it out or do something different, you're going to end up in a lot of trouble. So I don't have an IKEA near me. The nearest IKEA to me is in Houston, which is about an hour and a half in the plane plus some car time. So if you find yourself near an IKEA, stop in, pick up a whole bunch of these. It's probably the most useful thing in the whole store as far as I'm concerned. One thing I don't like about these is they're not as useful as a shoebox for counting things. And I think I have a shoebox here, so I'm going to show you what I mean. Shoeboxes are the ideal place to dump out a bag, sort it all out, count it, and then return it to its bag for safekeeping. So let me get that set up. I'll show you how I use a shoebox to do that, and maybe it'll save you a few minutes. I am blessed with having really big feet, so my shoeboxes are really big. It doesn't matter whether it's so big or not for this task, but shoebox lid is the best thing. And we're going to process all of these parts through the shoebox, count them, check them off on the inventory sheet, return them to the bag, and then into the bin for the empennage and future building. It does say in the instructions, don't count rivets, because you can see that, you know, 4 ounces of rivets fills this bag. I mean, it's a huge bag of rivets, and I really wouldn't want to spend my time counting these individual rivets. I'll tell you from experience that there's about 1/3 too many rivets here. You are not going to run out of rivets. It just doesn't happen. The exception for that are pulled rivets. You know, pulled rivets with a rivet gun that you're manually setting, or some of us have a pneumatic rivet gun for these pulled rivets. I do count these. These are more expensive than the solid rivets that are driven with a squeezer or a rivet gun. The number matters because you get closer to using all of these in the build than you do these. If you're short, it's a real drag to be 1 rivet short when you go to finish a project. You're all excited, you're going to finish a thing, and then, oh man, 1 rivet short. So I do count these. It's worth a little bit of extra time. Please don't count these. Take their advice. This is bag 411. 411 is CS 4-4 rivets. flush mounted pulled rivets, and I'm supposed to have 150 of them. So I'm going to pour them in my shoebox, and I'm going to count them up. Shoeboxes are nice because you can push them all to one side, shove them over to the other side as you're counting. It's a little bit like being at the old-fashioned hardware store where you want you know, a bunch of penny nails, and the guy would dump it into the bin, count them out, and then slide it over. Or the pharmacy does it this way too, although they probably don't touch it with their hands. All right, well, I've counted all these up, and it looks like I have 151, and you run into that all the time. I mean, I'm probably not going to send one rivet back to Vans, but you'll see why the shoebox comes in handy. It's not helping me out here very much because these are kind of big and it's a small bag, but a lot of times you can just pour them back in the bag. Looks like this time I'm going to have to actually do it a little more manually. And we'll go on to the next one. All right, so this is a good time to talk about plate nuts. So plate nuts are, think of a nut, but in an airplane you may not be able to get a wrench to both sides. You may not be able to get a wrench to the nut to hold the nut on, plus you'd have to reach through a hole, do a bunch of hijinks, be holding a nut while you start a bolt. It really is a contortion to do that. So they have plate nuts, and plate nuts have what counts as a nut in the middle. It's a threaded insert. I don't know if you can see the threads, but this is threaded for a bolt. This is threaded for a pretty big bolt. And then there are little holes on the side where a rivet can hold this in place. So the nice thing about a plate nut is that you can rivet that in place behind a panel, and it is always there, and when you thread the bolt through, it takes up into the plate nut, and you're not having to reach behind and do anything. It's riveted in place. So there are a lot of plate nuts in these kits, and they come in a lot of different sizes. So this bag was 414, and 414 has 7 K1000-6s, and so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The number is correct. I'll return it to its bag. Again, assuming my technique works. See, it's starting to pay off, even if I'm a little clumsy. And I'll put it in here for later use, and I'm going to start sort of keeping them in order. Here's our second box of the RV-8 Empennage. Again, another fragile, high-dollar aircraft parts. That might be my favorite part. I haven't kept the other boxes when I've gotten things, but I don't know, I might have to find a way to put this on the wall like a cork board or something.